I've seen a lot of talk recently about the Miami Mall alien event at the Bayside Marketplace. I was there for that event. Without going into too much detail, I was part of the cleanup crew. I never got to see the creature cause carnage that time, but I saw what it left behind. I saw the people writhing on the ground like they were having seizures. I saw as what should have been perfectly normal and healthy people stood there in a trance. They would have blood just pouring. It would pour from their noses, their mouths, and even their eyes in some cases. I saw some covering their ears and running. They were just completely incoherent, and it was almost like they were in another world. They acted like the thing was still there, like they were still being attacked. I'm not sure if hallucinations, trauma, or lingering effects from the being. There were many very severely wounded which never got reported. Many were left in vegetative states as a result of the creature rummaging around in their minds. That is one of the scariest parts of this thing. It can enter your brain and alter your memories. It can make you see yourself doing things that you never did. I'm not sure if past lives or alternate realities where you took a different direction, but it can haunt you with them. This process does not always work properly, and instead of just changing memories or making you see other ones, it removes them, which sometimes results in the deletion of too much and damages the brain permanently. Anything from mildly reduced cognition to permanent brain damage. My job was to grab who I could and evacuate them. We had set up a temporary camp for those still conscious enough to be able to speak. We did what we had to do to them to obfuscate what happened. I'm sure you get the picture. The Miami Mall event specifically is not what I'm here to talk about though. I want to tell you about what led up to the Miami Mall alien invasion, if you can even call them aliens. You see, this is far from the first time that this has happened. The Miami Mall event was actually the third time we've been able to document this, although it is possible that other instances have happened in places underneath our noses. All that to say, I have seen these beings before. They did not come here of their own accord. It is the fault of the United States government and their special branches of military research that the Miami Mall event ever occurred. We created a doorway for them that they decided to happily use. This happened back when I was working on a base in Nevada. This was back in 2009 that I first saw one of the Miami Mall aliens. Don't be mistaken, this was not Area 51 or any place like that. Area 51 is purely a distraction. It's there to draw attention away from the real bases, where the real experiments are happening. See a strange light in the sky? Oh well, must be at Area 51. And then they stop digging, because it is case closed. The base that we worked at is somewhere underneath Nevada, but it is under some place that you would least expect it to be. The base uses so much power that it has to blend in. If it were located somewhere in the middle of nowhere, it would be much too obvious. Instead, it blends in under another place that consumes a lot of power from the grid. This is so that nobody gets tipped off, and also so that workers can easily slip in and out without arousing any suspicion, because it's already very busy, so no one would ever question it. Anyway, in this underground base were these kinds of labs that we would use. Not me personally. I was there for security and errands mostly. The main thing that I would do is guard and oversee. Occasionally, I would transport items, materials, and people as and when necessary. I would sometimes rotate to other areas in the base, sometimes even above ground. Most of the time though, I was stationed in these labs and saw a lot of things firsthand. Scientists and experts had been flown in from all across the world. Experts in any field that you can imagine, and they were there. The project had a very lofty goal, and had been worked on for upwards of 10 years by that point. The goal was this. The project was intended to be able to create a way to transport personnel and materials covertly. It was designed so that agents would be able to infiltrate places not normally possible, or if possible, would be too high of a risk on a grand scale. It would allow agents and military personnel to conduct espionage without even having a cover story, without having any risk of being detected. You would pop up, see what you wanted, plant what you needed, kill who was required, and then poof, gone again. Like I said, the project was a long shot, and it seemed for a long time that nothing would ever come to fruition. Even after upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars spent on research, the progress was essentially non-existent. The government knew it was far-fetched and experimental, but that had never stopped them before. It did not help that much of the foundation of the project was based on mythology, local folklore, superstition, and only a smattering of personal experience. Testimony from soldiers and civilians which could have easily been wholly unreliable. Aircraft seemingly vanishing on the spot without any indication of cloaking technology. Soldiers on the battlefield disappearing and reappearing. Missing persons cases that defied any and all logic. The working theory for the project was that the Earth has this kind of barrier around it. It's essentially like a shield that stops anything and everything from getting in or out. Not from space though. This is a dimensional barrier. Most of the Earth is impossible to breach, but there are certain places on Earth where the protection is weak or strained, where the barrier is much thinner, allowing for breaches of all kinds. The government calls these places thin places, which is taken from the mythology that we were studying. These are places where things like alien sightings are much more common. Think about it. When you hear about alien sightings, it almost always seems to be in the same few places every single time, in very specific parts of the world. These are places where sometimes time does not work properly, where missing time becomes common, where people go missing inexplicably without any earthly trace. And if there is a trace, it is always unusual and nonsensical. These are places where the rules and law of the universe become weakened, where these laws become less strict depending on the type of breach occurring. Nevada is one of these places. It's why there are so many military bases and such a large military presence there. Antarctica is another good example, although it is not as practical due to the isolated nature and the conditions of the place. There are other places like this around the world that for one reason or another were a lot more difficult to make work. So, the final aim of this project was to be able to finally breach this barrier. They were intending to form a kind of passageway that could be used to move from one thin place on Earth to another one. Then, once perfected, they could possibly make tiers in places where the barrier is not as weak. I would be lying through my teeth if I told you I understood exactly how the science behind this worked, or how they were even planning to form this breach. Maybe it was less science-based. Like I said, the laws of the universe do not always behave perfectly in these places. In the grand scheme of things, I was more of a high-ranking, glorified grunt. I was just there to oversee and protect and fetch, basically. In 2009, in that underground base in Nevada, they finally succeeded. I am not sure exactly how, because I was not watching when they did it. I was too busy sending orders through the radio and performing routine checks around the lab area. What I saw when I looped back around was incredible. It was something that to this day, I can still scarcely believe. Right there in the center of the room, I could see a hole. Not a large one, probably only around the size of a human finger or thumb. It was just floating, suspended in midair. A tiny hole in the fabric of reality itself. If I'm honest, looking straight into it made me feel nauseous. You could not actually see anything beyond the hole. It was just kind of a void, I guess. Just pure black was all that you could see through it. And then we witnessed something else. We witnessed something coming through that hole. Every person in the room at that moment jumped back in shock. But it was just a finger. It was incredibly long and pale, but it was definitely a finger of some kind. It was just not a human one. I instantly radioed in, and the whole place was on high alert. The personnel under me I ordered to remain outside until agents who were trained specifically for this got here. I was ordered to be prepared to use lethal force. I instructed everyone in the room to wait until we had assessed before acting. Looking at the finger made my head hurt. It had some kind of a perception filter. You could look at it and see it, but it was blurry. Like you were looking past or through it, rather than directly at it. Like you were looking at it through your peripheral vision, and could not be sure of what you were seeing. Others in the room reported feeling dizzy or sick. Those idiots did not listen. It was the lead scientist on the case. I had to physically restrain him, but I could not grab both of his arms in time. He managed to touch the fingers with his index finger before I had him in a full Nelson. When he touched it, he yelped in pain. He told me that his finger was burning, and I called him an idiot. He told me he was being serious and to take a look. He had an actual burn on his finger. An incredibly large boil had already begun to form on his finger. It had only been a few seconds. I asked for backup to get there faster, and they gave me an ETA of 5 minutes. Then we witnessed a horrifying sight. The finger began to curl. The finger then proceeded to pinch the hole. Where it was just suspended in midair, it pinched where the edges were, and it began to pull. It pulled the hole ever so slowly until it got bigger, and then it was big enough for a hand to go through. And it did. 2 of them. 2 pale, elongated, and emaciated hands grabbed the hole and ripped it even wider until it was more like a doorway. Big enough for a human to fit through. Big enough for 2 humans stacked on top of each other to fit through. I ordered for everyone in this room to evacuate and readied my weapon. The second I saw those hands move forward to expose arms, I began firing. The bullets did nothing. There was no feedback and no sound. It was like the bullets just ceased to exist once they reached the hole. And then it stepped out fully. It was the same being that appeared at the Miami Mall, almost 10 feet tall in stature, and just incomprehensible. My eyes worked. I could see it, but focusing on the details made my head hurt. It did not make any kind of fluid motion. It just skipped forward in my vision. 1 second it was in the portal. The next second it was standing over the body of a cowering scientist. And the next second they were convulsing on the floor with blood gushing out of their ears. And the next second it was over another scientist. And the next second he had put a scalpel to his own throat. With every movement it made, it warped reality. Door frames would flutter or expand whenever it went near. The floor would bend or expand, like the light was refracting differently. Backup did arrive, and nearly every single one of them ended up dead. One of the soldiers that I saw, he just stretched. I don't even know how to say it. The being was next to him, and then his limbs started to lengthen. His neck grew larger and longer. His eyeballs bulged until they could no longer fit in his sockets, and he screamed louder than I had heard any human scream before, until I heard a distinct pop. And then I saw a splatter. And right then and there, I wish that thing had erased my memories too. I wish it had killed me, or made me a vegetable. Because that sight and that sound is something that will remain in my head for the rest of my life. After I don't know how long, the thing reappeared in the room. I was on the floor. Blood was pouring out of my nose and mouth, and I could hear this ungodly screech in my ears. Just a constant ringing. Like an explosion had just happened right beside me, but 1,000 times more intense and painful. I could feel my heart tightening and the palpitations getting worse. I felt like I was going into cardiac arrest. I saw the thing close the portal, but I never saw it actually close it. It just stood there, and then the portal was gone. It never went back through. I don't know if it's because the being is not supposed to exist in our dimension, and so the actions just don't translate to human eyes. I have no fucking idea. And then it appears over me, and I think I'm going to die. And the next thing that I see is a bright white light, and I feel my heart stop. I experienced things that I don't even know how to explain. Visions of things that I don't know what they are. Whether they are the future, or another world, or another person. I did not wake back up for a week after that. The doctors did not think I would wake up ever again. They said it was strange, that even though I was in a coma, My brain activity was not reduced. It was still functioning as if I was still awake and actively thinking and doing things. That creeped me the fuck out. I will try and cut this short, because I have already waffled on for far too long. The base was left in a disaster. Massive casualties of soldiers were suffered. Only a few of the scientists on the project were still alive. Some were clinically brain dead. Some were in horrific states. From those of us still left, the running theory was that whatever this alien was, it lived in the void that we saw. The scientists thought that perhaps the being was contained in this void with no way of getting through, or maybe it did not know anything existed beyond the void, but we showed it the way through. And now that it knows the planet exists and that it can be breached, it can roam freely over the Earth. We have no idea what its goals are, whether it considers humans an enemy, an annoyance, or what, whether it plans to enslave us, kill us, or something else. The Miami Mall incident on the 1st of January 2024 was the third time that it has shown itself. The second time, we were not able to witness it personally. That was because it occurred in China, and they were very reluctant to share any information about the event. It took a lot of coaxing and negotiating, and I don't know the broader details. As of right now, the base underneath Nevada is basically a skeleton of what it once was. It is barely in use after that event. Every resource is being poured into finding and containing the thing. But how do you contain what you don't understand? How do you find what you can barely even see? That is why the response at the mall was so big. That is why they did everything in their power to shut people up and cover everything up. It's a thing they still do not understand. It's something they're trying desperately to contain. And if people find out they did it, that we are responsible, then the whole world is fucked. 16 years is a long time for an entity from a different dimension to acclimate to ours. Who knows what it is capable of now? Even in Nevada, it seemed impossibly beyond our comprehension. In Miami, it seemed like just covering its tracks was the most that any of us could do. Survive if you can, hide if you can, and most of all, just pray. That is all that we could do. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Be me. I am around 13 years old at the time this happened. I am out hunting with my dad on family property. We are close to the center of our 500-something acre land. We live in the city, not in this area. My dad is nodding off, still pretty early on in the morning. Crack, crack, crack. We hear .22 gunfire deliberately heading in our direction, about 8 to 10 shots in total. The gunshots are slightly above our heads as to scare us. We could almost track the rounds through the air from the noise. It was surreal shit. It was deer season. You don't typically hunt deer with a .22. My dad goes into soldier mode. He throws me on the ground and says don't fucking move. We just laid together on the ground for a good solid 45 minutes to maybe an hour. After that we heard nothing. There was no movement at all, and the source of the shots seemed really close, so logically, unless whoever was shooting was a ninja, he was still out there, probably watching us. Also, wearing hunter orange was also mandatory in the state at the time. We saw nothing and we heard nothing. Eventually, we noped the dick out of there. My dad and uncle called some friends and they went back armed for a fight. They didn't find whoever it was and would not really tell me anything until a few years later. When they went back, they found a makeshift shack/shelter. There were bones and remains of animals all over, like someone had been living there. My uncle told me they burned it to the ground. I was not allowed back in the area for quite some time after that event. Mine's not that good, just a bit spoopy. This happened to me a couple of years ago. I was in Atlanta, hanging out with some friends after hitting some bars. We are trying to go and get some chicken and waffles because we are fucked up in the south at 3 a.m. We are in a backwoods-ass part of Georgia, north of Atlanta now. We pull into this ramshackle gas station to pay. No one is around at all. While walking in, I notice a van to the side of the building. The doors are open, with the dome light on, dying. What the hell? Curious, after I tinkle, I tell one of my buddies to come and check it out since no one else was there and the cashier did not know anything about it. We look inside the van. The fucking interior is splattered with thick, almost fresh-looking blood. It smells like death too. Oh fuck nah. We sobered up real goddamn quick. We round everyone up like a camp counselor and smashed the fuck out of there. Went to a Waffle House. Jimmy's rustled. On January 4th, 2008, 2 days after Emerson was last seen, a witness at a Chevron gas station called the Cobb police and stated that the guy you are looking for is cleaning out his van. The police arrived quickly on scene and were able to stop the accused before he was able to bleach the interior of the van. Crime scene analysts were able to get blood evidence that was later matched to Emerson's DNA. Gary Michael Hilton was then arrested and charged with Emerson's murder. I lived in Union County, Georgia during this time. The Emerson woman was kidnapped from the southern end of the county at the time we lived there. We lived in the far northern end of the county. Some side info. The killer kidnapped and killed an elderly couple out for a walk in North Carolina. He tried and failed to use their ATM card at a Tennessee bank ATM just over the border into Tennessee in Copper Hill. They got him on camera trying to use it. Shortly after he was caught, a local woman went missing from our hometown there, Blairsville, Georgia. She went out walking one evening, and her boyfriend on the phone with her heard her get kidnapped. We lived about 12 miles north of where she was kidnapped, but it was one long connector road. It turns out he came right up the road and went past our road after taking her. When they finally found her body, she was within 3 miles of our home. The guy, James Carringer, was likely a serial killer or on the verge of becoming one. He had tried to kidnap another woman in that area not long before. Turns out, I worked with his sister at a computer place in North Carolina. She was very pretty, nice, and outgoing. She had many friends and seemed to be the average normal young woman. She got married to her high school sweetheart while we both worked there. Her husband died a couple of years into the marriage. He drowned in the shower. Supposedly, he had seizures and had one in the shower. Yeah, I know, but it was never considered a crime. So, she is no longer alive either. She had lots of mental problems after her husband's death. She had 2 kids. I think it was 2 in total. Anyway, before her brother's crime and suicide, she took her own life. She had lost custody of her kids due to her mental state. She was doing better and was allowed to accompany her parents and children on a trip to see family. Her parents had custody of the kids at that point. They were at a cabin site. She got the kids in her cabin and stabbed them. Their wounds were not life-threatening, but the commotion alerted her father, who found her trying to harm the grandkids. He managed to wrestle her away and shut her out of the cabin. At that point, she turned the knife on herself and slit her own throat. She died before she could be helped. Her father was a well-known insurance agent in Hayesville/Murphy, NC, which is where we worked. It's right over the border from our Georgia home. He was a really nice guy from my interaction with him. I could not believe what that family went through in such a short time period. He had 2 kids die of suicide in the process of harming others. His son having died while being pursued for another attempted kidnapping, and his daughter trying to harm her own kids. The other interesting bit of info, the Atlanta Olympics bomber, Eric Rudolph, was arrested just behind the strip mall where I worked. I actually saw him in downtown Murphy, NC, about a month before he was captured. He was clean and well-dressed, just hanging out on a bench in front of the bank. He got up and walked straight down the street in front of the city police station, then on past the county courthouse, where the sheriff's office was. At the time, I thought he looked familiar, and later thinking about it, I could not believe he would just be out in the open and walk past the police departments. Besides, he was clean, and the FBI were looking 50 miles away, thinking he was in a woods the entire time. I missed out on that $1,000,000, damn it. This isn't so much spooky as it was weird, but 100% true. Not going to greentext it because I am lazy. So, me and my friend and his lady are having a burn cruise in the sticks. We like to smoke and drive around on these windy back roads with trees canopying the road. Generally, we would not see any cars on the road, so it was all pretty relaxing. You did have to worry about country cops. For those of you who aren't from the country, cops in the country do not have a whole lot to do, so the worry was that a lot of times they would see a car on the road, tailgate them to make them nervous, then pull them over. But our driver was a granny driver, so we were not worried. Anyways, we are about 3 bowls deep going up this hill, and we see a slow-moving truck in front of us. Not really thinking anything of it, we keep about 2 car lengths between us and the truck, so he cannot see in. My buddy is hitting the bowl again, and I notice that this piece of shit truck is smoking a whole hell of a lot. We are doing about 30 miles per hour up this hill behind this truck, and I remember thinking that a vehicle shouldn't have that much smoke coming from the tailpipe. Slowly but surely, we make it up this hill to where the road evens out. It's an area where to your left, there is the side of the mountain, low enough grade that you could hike up it if you wanted, but steep enough that you will be winded at a light trot. So, we get to this flat area, and suddenly, the smoke from the truck isn't just coming from the tailpipe, it's coming from underneath the truck itself. Still going at the same pace as before, but a lot more smoke. Then I notice something red. The red turns into light flames under the truck, and then a roar of flames. We slow way the fuck down, but this truck just keeps going. We are laying on the horn as the underside of this truck is completely covered in flames, and they are starting to crawl up the side of the truck. All the while, this driver is oblivious. I had to check myself, but the 2 other occupants of our vehicle were freaking out as well, so I knew it was all actually happening. Finally, the flames reached this dude's windows, and he finally stopped the car. We stop our car, so as to not get too close to his now completely inflamed truck. He gets out, and I kid you not, sprints into the woods up the side of the mountain. We backed our car up another 50 feet and called the cops, and they came. They took the driver's statement of what happened. The truck ended up completely destroyed by the fire, as you would expect. Tire exploded, which was pretty wild, but the driver never came back. He literally ran off into the woods and never came back. They used to do smash and grabs near where I grew up a lot. They would have like 3 or 4 vehicles at prearranged spots to stop people following after. I imagine that guy was doing something similar, but with transporting a flammable liquid. Liquid spills, hits the hot underside, and catches fire. Guy is caught and hightails before the police come by. Be me. I was around 12 years old at the time that this happened. It was the year 1996. I was with my best friend, who was also 12 years old. We were jumping stuff with our BMXs. We were in the parking lot of an old paint factory. The building burnt down one night, 5 years earlier. There were no casualties. My friend is building ramps with discarded wood and some rocks. I stick my head inside the building. I instantly feel really weird. It's like I'm in a vacuum. I feel a presence underneath all of the rubble. My friend calls my name. I come back to my senses. I walk towards him and say, "What? What?" very nervously. All of a sudden, an invisible hand grabs my arm very tightly. I am spooked, and I have to fight it to free myself. I run. I don't know what to tell my friend, so I just say nothing. I don't feel like playing anymore. My friend wants to explore a little hangar. We get inside the hangar. It's just an empty steel shed. Suddenly, bang, 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 bang. It sounds like giant fists are beating on the roof. We bolt out of there, get on our bikes, and pedal as fast as we can. It took me years to go back there. I still do not know what that was all about.